Welcome to this episode of Real Talk. I'm your host, Dr. Asha, and today I have a very special guest, someone that I've known for a very long time, and we just were able to reconnect recently. And I'd like to introduce her to you. Her name is Lauren Johnston. I'm going to tell you a little bit about her first, just so you get some background. This is going to be a really, really exciting episode because we're going to be talking about topics that are about real life. I'm pretty sure all of you will be able to relate to the topics that we're going to be talking about. Now, Lauren is an intuitive life advisor and a memoir writer. Before beginning this journey, she's been working more than 20 years. She spent 18 years as a hairstylist, a career that she now jokes about having been her first training of listening to other people's stories. And I think that we all can agree with that. That's where you get to hear a lot of what's going on for people's lives. Today, much of her work just centers around love, loss, grief, life's transitions, and rebuilding what comes after these life changes for all of us. She's currently writing a memoir and recently launched her Substack, Life, Love, Loss, and Upgrade, where she writes about grief, reinvention, mindfulness, life in Belize. Excited to hear about that, Lauren. And the unexpected upgrades that can come from loving, losing, and continuing to live. Welcome to the show, Lauren. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Asha, so much. It's so wonderful to be here. And I'm so grateful that we reconnected,
I know.
and it's just and the timing is so perfect. So yeah, thanks. Thanks very much. Glad to be here.
So, Lauren, what I'd like to ask you first, if maybe you can, open up about what exactly is grief. And the reason why I'm asking that question is that sometimes I don't think people really understand it. We hear that word, but we just don't know what it is. So I'm curious what your take is.
For me, I've experienced a lot. I feel like I have a very intimate relationship with grief. By the time I was in my early 30s, I was going through a breakup and I was seeing a therapist. But then, I got through the breakup and probably about age 31, 32, a really good friend of mine passed away suddenly, probably a heart attack. And I just was done with going to funerals. I just had been to a lot of funerals by my early 30s. And when I went in to see my therapist to talk to her about that, she had known, that I'd lost my mother, my father, two friends from elementary school, two friends from high school through suicide. And she knew a lot of this stuff, but she didn't realize the impact that I had in my life. And so she was like, okay, well, Lauren, that's not normal to have that many people pass away this early. And I was like, really? I mean, I thought it was right. I thought everybody went through that. So I think I experienced it at such a young age, but yet it did not really impact me all that much until later in relationships, the ending of relationships. But with each experience of that grief it's like the beginning, the beginning of the end of something and a new beginning. So kind of to keep it for me, one of the things I'm learning right now is that, so hurt represents something happened. Okay. Right. And pain to me represents it mattered. Yeah. And then grief is just the process, the feeling of it. And then it's the next level. And that's to me, the segue into how am I going to live my life differently?
Right. Well, Lauren, when you were younger, I mean, it sounds like you had a lot of losses before the age of 18. So how was it talked about with you? Like, did you have anybody in your surroundings, any adults or anybody that was like framing it for you?
So with my mother, because I was pretty young, I was 10, she had cancer for about 6 years back in the 60s, and that was very unusual. Wow. We didn't really talk about it until the very end when my father said, the last time she went into the hospital, he said, when I said, when is she coming home? And he said, well, she's not this time. And that was pretty much
Okay.
the story. But I did have my sisters and we talked about it and cried together. And,
Hmm.
I remember when my sister Claire and I watched Brian's song. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Oh,
Beautiful. Really
so, and I
beautiful.
mean, I just remember Claire and I just, crying and crying
Right.
and crying. And it was such a
Right.
release. And I think I remember feeling so much better after that,
Hmm.
you know?
Right.
And then I was fortunate enough too to have my best friend's mother took me in and adopted me pretty young. I mean, I took her maiden name when I was 18 years old,
Really?
But
Okay.
yeah, that's Johnston, and I kept it. But
Okay.
Jacqueline was very woo-woo, very spiritual,
Hmm.
and she really was. I think it wasn't so much that we talked a lot about death or grief or stuff, but
Hmm.
she had such a different concept of, well, when people die, they're still here,
Ah,
you know,
okay. Yeah.
and she
Yeah.
did have that like reincarnation, and she taught me about these things. And so somehow that helped
Hmm.
a little bit. It
Right.
didn't really process the grief, but it gave me like something to anchor into. Like it's
Right.
not the end, you know.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not really one of these people who feels the people who passed,
Hmm.
they're them with me, like that. I
Right.
don't feel them talking to me, but sometimes I do feel, the energy.
Right.
But for the most part, it was just, and yeah, I got to realize too, this was the 70s.
Yeah.
So, people didn't really talk
They didn't
about it.
really talk about it then. They weren't talking about it openly anyway. Even if they were behind closed doors, things were happening or whatever. It was like they weren't talking about it. Yeah,
We
no,
cried, we
that's
cried, but
beautiful
not
though,
talk.
Lauren.
Yeah.
That's beautiful though that you had that other, the other mother figure that came in, and even though it wasn't directly spoken about, there was this idea that, okay, they're still around, so you can be okay with living life and, having that. I guess, I think that it's very interesting when because we all have different belief systems. We all have
Yeah.
different viewpoints. We grow up with different things and then we develop our own as we get older, of course. But like this idea that there is something more than just here in this physical world,
Yeah.
which, I definitely believe. But I mean, it's one of those things when your world gets opened up in that way, I think that processing things like grief and loss changes completely. Your perspective, you get an opportunity to see things from a very different vantage point.
Yeah, I agree,
Yeah.
Asha. And I mean, I think too, opening up when my therapist was like,
Mhm.
that's not normal. And I was like, well, I thought it was, and
Exactly.
I do feel that that has been such a, like a, I don't like using the word purpose that much as it
Right.
like it mattered. It really mattered that
Exactly.
I had that experience because I do feel like I was kind of put here to share, that the
Right.
thing that I really believe in grief
Hmm.
is that if we can really lean into it and
Right.
really get in it and feel it is the same level that we can really lean in and feel love
Yeah.
because
Hmm.
without love, you wouldn't experience grief. Without grief, you wouldn't experience love. They come hand in hand.
That is so
No,
true. That is so true. And I think that that's one of the main reasons why people like they don't know how to process a grief. A lot of times sometimes they don't even have a space that they can talk about it or name it. And because I've seen a variety, and with my cultural background, in our culture, it's dealt with differently. It was dealt with a lot different whenever I was younger too. I dealt with a lot of losses at a younger age as well, not in the same way as you, but just a lot of things. And it was just kind of these things that were becoming normal, but it it was becoming normal, but at the same time, it was also the normal was to not talk about it. Like deal with it quietly, privately. I can still remember, I'll share this with you.
yeah,
It's
I'm
very
really curious
interesting.
about how you, grew up with it and stuff. So,
So, and the thing is, you know, I think I was probably around 8 or 9 years old. And one of my really, really close friends' mothers passed away of cancer. And it was devastating. It was really, really because it was just, she was really young and it was just, we were young and I just didn't know how to process it. I remember coming home that day and I'll never forget, I just was breaking down in tears and my mom giving me a hug and her kind of motioning to my father to come over. And my father came over, but I'll never forget the words that he said. And I talked to him about it later on, as an adult, because I was just like, gosh, but he said to me, he said, it's a part of life. You have to accept it. And those are not comforting words when you're like 8 or 9 years. It's not comforting words at all. But I mean,
Well,
wasn't meant
but
that way.
it's interesting
Yes,
because really it is
it is.
part
I
of
know.
life.
I know.
I mean, and
Exactly.
trying to, if not accepting it,
Yeah.
is not accepting life.
It's true. It is true. I mean, looking back on it at that time, what
It hurt.
it hurt, but what it also meant for me is I saw it as a weakness. Don't even ask why, but that's how I interpreted it. I interpreted it
No, I get it.
as a weakness. And I said, okay, when you're grieving, don't let anybody see it. Just quietly. And that's actually, quite honestly, the way that I tend to, even to this day, deal with most of that grieving process very quietly with myself. And I mean, fortunately I have, a support group and I have people in my life that I can
Sure.
unpack it with. And I do to a certain degree, but that formed everything for me.
That's a core limiting belief and
Exactly.
that's the thing about children and even adults. It's like, we have an experience and then we have a thought about it. And then we keep thinking about that, which becomes that belief. And then
Exactly.
we'll see through that filter, and
right.
you're saying it's weak, it's not strong. It's almost like he was saying, protect yourself because it's going to happen.
Exactly. Exactly. Later on, whenever I was an adult, and I did talk to him about it because by that time there were more people that we had lost and,
Sure.
just kind of things like that. I was just like, okay. And I said to him, and I realized for him, we had a very, very deep discussion about it. And this is something you have to understand most of the time in the Indian culture, and especially with my father's generation now, I mean, it changed because they came over to the States. They came and were living in the Western world, because you didn't have those conversations back in India with your parents or with your grandparents. Those conversations weren't happening. But when I spoke to my father about it, he had also had many, many losses at a very young age. He lost siblings at a very young age and, things like that. And so for him, because it wasn't being talked about, life moved on. He was the eldest. He had a lot of responsibilities and stuff. He realized that this is just what life is. It's the good, bad, and the ugly. And the quicker that you accept it, the better you can live your life as well. Doesn't mean you forget anybody. Doesn't mean that that you've really lost. And he was a very spiritual person in the sense that he did believe that people were still,
There's an afterlife of some sort.
Exactly.
Or that your soul, your body expired, but your soul is everlasting.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. So it was very interesting, having that conversation with him, because it reframed things for me in so many ways. And I thought, yeah, okay. It probably deepened my spiritual beliefs and spirituality in a lot of ways.
I bet.
So
it does open you up, I think. And, nowadays there's so much talk about the afterlife or the soul moving on or the energy that stays, I listened to a lot of podcasts about it, but I think it's neat too that he was able to kind of have that conversation with you, like it's good, beneficial for him.
It definitely was, because I don't think that he probably ever, maybe with my mother, but I don't think he ever really spoke about that openly. Because, like I said, in the cultural standpoint, you just don't have conversations like that. It's very, I'm very fortunate that way with both of my parents to have had open conversations with a lot of things. kind of pushed the envelope a little bit, got them out of their comfort zone a
Of
little bit.
course you
Like,
did.
I want to know what this is, what's this
They
about?
didn't realize when they had you that they were having a very old soul
Oh,
come into
yes.
their life, and they're like,
Exactly.
"What do we do with this one?"
Exactly. Exactly. So, but I do understand, with other people, and I'd like to ask you what you think when someone loses someone, okay? Whether it's grief, like whether it's a loss, like a death, or even loss of a relationship or loss of a way of life. Do you see that as a similar form of grief, or how do you view that, Lauren?
Again, because I'll just kind of tap into my personal experience from it
Hmm.
because I've had, the loss of a relationship that, I
Right.
was married and with this man for 21 years. And that was a huge loss. And kind of going back, I'd like to go back a little bit because you mentioned your belief that you
Right.
came up with that it's weak and stuff. And that's one
Mhm.
of the things that was so profound about my marriage and the end of it was because the belief that I got at 10 years old. Now, I had lost my uncle when I was 6, and I was so close. He was like my best friend. He
Right.
played tea party with
Oh my
me.
gosh.
He built
Yeah.
me swings, and they had one
Right.
son that was older that unfortunately was an addict, and so they didn't get him as a child, but they got me.
Right.
So by the time my mom came or passed away,
Mhm.
the belief for me was she abandoned me,
Oh,
you
wow.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
mean, that
No,
doesn't
that's
make
true.
sense as an adult, right? But
Right.
it did. And so one of the things this is in my memoir, and this is kind of another thing that's why it's so fresh. Like
Hmm.
literally, if we had this conversation 6 months ago, I wouldn't have this memory so here
Right.
but basically, I spent 21 years with somebody who I know loved me deeply, and I loved him
Hmm.
very deeply. But there was a lot of issues, infidelity.
Hmm.
There was very different values around money and making money. I was pretty much the breadwinner. No, I was the breadwinner. Let me rephrase that.
Rephrase that.
And but I put up with it
Right.
because I didn't want him to abandon me.
Ah, okay.
And so
Yeah.
I didn't realize I was operating in that lens. I did not
Oh.
know that. I just, oh no, it's all okay. And then
Mhm.
I kind of come out and, you know, uh, be like, are you seeing other people? And I'd have a fit for like, a little period of time. And then he'd be, no, no, no. And then I'd go back in my box,
Mhm.
or I'd be upset because, we couldn't go on a vacation because I was the only one bringing in money. And then
Right.
I'd be upset. And then I'd go back into my box, my denial
Mhm.
box.
Right.
And it was because but I did not realize until 21 years later. I literally woke up one morning and realized that every time I look away,
Mhm.
every time I go back into that box, the denial box,
Right.
because I don't want him to leave,
Right.
I'm abandoning myself.
Yeah. Wow. That is profound.
And that's
What
what
was what
changed.
was was there one thing that woke you up with that, Lauren, or was it like
Yeah,
a
yeah,
series of
it
things?
was many things, but the last thing was I had evidence that he was not faithful.
Ah, okay.
I,
Yeah.
I got evidence, and this one, there's no way he could have lied out
Right.
of it. And
Right.
again, I don't feel like he really, he just had issues. That's
Right.
it.
Right.
He's really an awesome person. Like
Yeah.
we joke about
Exactly.
it. My best friend and I, it's like he's a great friend. He's a great
Right.
person. He's just not good at marriage.
Right.
you
And you know what? That is, and the thing about that is that I think realizing, although it's very painful, there are painful
So
parts of
painful.
that, of course, but realizing we all have our stuff. And it's just
Dark
a
side.
matter of whether or not we're going to work on it, whether we are working on it, whether, the two people can work together with it, or, you know what I mean? It's just there. But once we accept that, it does that also, I feel like you can accept it and, love it for what it was and what
Yeah.
it gave you and be able to continue with life as
Yeah.
well.
And it was a real gift because
Right.
I don't know if I would have recognized that I stick things out because I didn't want to be
Oh,
abandoned by
wow.
the other person.
Okay.
And at that point forward, I guess I was in my early 50s. Yeah, I think I was like 50 or 51 when
Mhm.
that realization came. And it was one of these things where he said, "Oh, I'm going to get help." And then it never happened.
It never happened.
No, and I finally just could
Yeah,
not go back in the box. Once you see something, evidence, you can't go
true.
back. If you
So
just
true.
have suspicion but you don't
Mhm.
have proof, it's harder
Yeah.
to come in and say, this is it. It's either this or I'm out of here because I can't keep abandoning myself.
Right.
And it was a real game changer for me, but it did not stop the grief. I mean, I got to tell you, the
Mhm.
grief that you feel, and this is something that's interesting too, because I know that I recently read the book by Belle Burden, Strangers. Have you read
I
that?
haven't read it. It's on my list though.
So it's really
Okay.
good. It's well
Okay.
written. And, but her stepmother, Susan,
Mhm.
her dad was long married to this woman named Susan, and
Mhm.
Susan's a therapist. I don't know. I'm sure she's still around, but Susan lost her husband through death, but then
Mhm.
Belle lost her husband through the divorce kind of thing. And it
Okay.
was a similar situation. I could relate to Belle because I was like that, like, even though I had suspicion, I
Right.
didn't have proof. And when it's proof that you can't
Yeah.
deny whether they are leaving you or you're leaving them because you
Right.
can't stay, it's just devastating. It's
Yeah.
devastating. And Susan tells Belle that she thinks it's worse
Mhm.
losing somebody through divorce than it is death because at least
Mm.
it's finite. It's there, it's over. There's nothing else. You move on.
Right.
When it's a divorce, and I don't know if I agree with it totally, but
Mm.
because I haven't had a loved person die.
Right.
I mean, I got a ton of people die, but not
Right.
a love
Exactly.
a lover. Um, but when it's then you start living your life,
Right.
but that person is still there living their life that you might see
Right.
or you might know about and you might hear, and that's the painful part.
Right. You know what I think about that, Lauren? I think, okay, when you lose somebody, no matter whether it's for an ending of a relationship or someone passes away, I think there's always the grief of that you lose a certain identity of yourself, like a certain version of yourself. Like you
Yeah,
are this person's wife, this person's girlfriend, this person's, this person's daughter, this person, whatever it is. And that totally changes. And there's a grieving process around that. So I don't know if one is worse than the other, but
I think they're it's close.
I think it's a really close thing but I do agree, if someone else is still there and moving on, the chances of you hearing about their lives or whatever, or being confronted with it, it's there, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I find that really interesting because I know in processing grief for myself personally, I have realized that there are certain roles that it's kind of like I've had to put them up on a shelf, like I'm not in that role anymore. And that has been, um, yeah, quite painful sometimes. But at the same time, it's also like, well, okay, I get the opportunity to create new roles and to be you, right? So,
It's and I
yeah,
love that you're saying that, Asha, because I hadn't put that together with the avenue that I was on, which is now how am I going to live my life differently?
exactly, exactly.
That's part of that. Who
Right,
am I in this
right,
new life? It's new identity. I got to figure out
right,
who I am in the next
right.
level,
Yeah.
And I think that is so true. It's all the whole process of it. I love also what you said about, and it feels painful to put it up on that
It
shelf
does.
because, again, to me, pain means it mattered.
Exactly. Exactly. I
Who
totally
I
agree with
was,
you.
it mattered.
Exactly. I love the fact that you're saying that, Lauren, because I see pain the same way, whether it is mental, emotional, physical. It is something, it's telling you something, right? It's there for a purpose. And a purpose meaning it gives you an opportunity to learn something, to let go of something, to
Mhm.
be aware of something, to change something. And I think that I know it's one of our greatest gifts in life actually is to feel, the opposite of love and feel the pain because if you don't have anything to compare it to, you don't know what the other side feels
That's
like,
right. You
like you have
can't know the
nothing.
light
No,
if you don't know the
exactly.
dark, you know.
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
I think too, it's interesting because like, you doing the work you do, and it's like you're
Mhm.
dealing with people with a lot of physical pain.
Right.
But I'm sure when you work with them and coach with them, you also realize that physical pain has a lot to do with the emotional
It really
pain.
does. It really
And
does. Do you
and
see that as well, Lauren? Do you, with working with your clients, do you see that as well?
yeah, I'm also learning um and experiencing it within my own personal life. And I'll talk about that in a
Right.
moment. But yeah, like one of my clients, has been in chronic pain. She's been diagnosed with I can't think of the name of it right now, but one of
Mhm.
the ones that creates a lot of inflammation in the
Right.
body and a lot of pain.
Right.
And as we start to unwind it,
Mm-hmm.
we're beginning to go back a little bit and see where these areas of her life were just
Right.
like where she'd been hurt or she had been neglected or she had been this. And it's painful. But once the memories are coming up and once we're processing through them, and what I do, the kind of work I do basically is
Mhm.
we take because the experience always has a thought, the thought has the belief and also the physical
Mhm.
aspect to it and the
Right.
emotion. So, like, I'm hurt. Okay. So something happened. All right. What is that? Now I'm feeling pain. That matters. Okay. What's
Right.
going on here? So it's always an emotional component or mental component
Yes.
along with the physical pain. And recently, so I recently had a experience where and I'm starting to learn so much about the pain starts in the
Right.
brain, and I
Exactly.
never looked at that before. I knew you knew that, but I never
Right.
looked at that before because once it happens to you personally, but basically back in December, I don't know, in the fall, I was playing a lot of pickleball.
Mhm.
I got into it and I was like,
Right.
oh, this is so much fun. It's so, and
Right.
I overdid it. And I, for the first time in my life, had sciatica, experienced sciatica. And oh my
Oh,
God.
wow. That's an
I
experience.
mean, ooh, and you being a chiropractor,
Yeah.
I can't believe I've never had it before, but it ended up
Yeah.
2, 3 months later, it was healed. It
Right.
literally was healed. I started writing the memoir.
Did you
So
start writing that before this happened or
I
after?
started writing it in February after the heal. Like
Okay.
I was just
Okay.
coming through the healing process. I was in
Okay.
Austin in February, saw my acupuncturist, got back to the island. I have a good chiropractor now.
Mhm.
Went got X-rays. Spine looks perfect.
Right.
My chiropractor's like, Lauren, I wouldn't even know you're 64 years old with the kind
Right.
of spine.
No.
And truth be told, I did
Yeah.
10 years of network chiropractic
You did. Okay. Yeah.
back
Yeah.
when I was a hairdresser.
Right.
I had my chiropractor was like, you want to trade? And I'm like, hell yeah, I want to trade. So that I'm a firm believer in that,
Right.
modality. And so anyway, I know for a fact that, I kept feeling this pain and I start listening to a lot of podcasts around pain starts in the brain and then the whole aspect that, our pain is good. We want to have pain because it's
Exactly.
our ego letting us know you're in danger. You need to pay attention. This
Exactly.
matters,
Exactly. Exactly.
pain, whether it's emotional or physical, it matters.
Right.
Something matters here. And
Right.
if it is an injury, you want to take care of it. You want to do what you got
Exactly.
to. But after a while, the brain will say, oh, just, And as I'm writing the memoir, I wouldn't say, I think there's just another layer of grief that I'm experiencing. And it's so cathartic. And it's so like, I cried so hard during the couple of years leading up to my mom's death. You
Right.
know, I cried so hard, but I got to tell you, after that,
Hmm.
I felt so light.
Exactly.
Now, my body was feeling a lot of the heaviness, and,
Hmm.
without a doubt, what is that book? The Body Keeps the Score.
Right.
Um,
Exactly.
and I haven't read it, for a long time. I didn't read it because I was thinking, well, I've never experienced that kind of
Right.
trauma.
Right.
But obviously, my brain does not know the difference between emotional trauma or
Exactly. The
being
physical.
abused. It's like,
Exactly. It's like it's
this
the same.
this hurts. So, but I really knew, because when I was listening to these podcasts, it said
Hmm.
how you know it's the plasticity
Hmm.
um pain is because it moves around
Exactly.
and it doesn't stay, and it gets better and it
Right.
gets better. And then you look at it like, when are you feeling it? So of course at night when I was sleeping, get up in the
Right.
morning. When I'm stressed out
Right.
about something. And then, the book, of course, is bringing up that. But after I do this writing and after I
Hmm.
cry, I feel great. And then I have a
Exactly.
couple pain-free days, or like what I like. I'm trying to upgrade now. Instead of saying, I woke up with pain, it's like I woke up not as comfortable in my body today.
Exactly. Exactly.
And honestly, what that does is it calms the amygdala down.
Exactly.
Because
Exactly.
you're using a word that's like, if you're
Right.
saying, I got stabbing pain, that's not going to stop, your amygdala is going, okay, let's.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
I'm really getting education while I'm writing this
Firsthand,
book.
firsthand education. But you know what, Lauren, I think, I mean, definitely, one of the things that I see is that I see, when we become, you said this earlier, when you become aware of something, like you can't be unaware of that
Yeah,
thing,
you can't
right?
undo it.
You just can't. It's like, I don't see it. No, you can't say that. Once you see it, you see it. And what I think happens, or what in my experience, is that on an emotional and mental level, even spiritual level, we can shift very quickly. We can have these shifts, and the physical body, because it's more dense energy, is
Yeah.
the way I look at it, takes longer to release things and to let it go. So it is something, a process of the healing. Sometimes it feels like it's getting worse before it gets better,
Yeah.
because the body may have been screaming at you for a while in different ways, but it just wasn't loud enough to get our attention. So it's definitely, and I think that once you start kind of diving in, and definitely with you writing this memoir and the topics that you're writing on, I think that you're just like unleashing and releasing all
Oh,
this,
it feels so
and that must feel
good.
liberating, lighter. You feel lighter,
And it's funny too, because like there's a lot of stories that I write that
right?
are hilarious. And I'm
Right.
just cracking up going, I can't believe that happened. Like I
Right.
couldn't have written. Matter of fact, one of my very dear friends, Blair, she and I were talking one time. It was the ending of my marriage. And
Hmm.
what was so like, just, I don't know if irony is the word, but
Right.
basically it's like, so right after I told my ex-husband, all right, we had a duplex. I said, I'm
Hmm.
moving into the east side, and this is the beginning of the end.
Right.
And right after that, um, our best friend was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer,
Oh, wow.
and
Yeah.
they were giving him basically 2 weeks to live. And so
Oh,
my ex, John, he basically just turned away from me to deal with Joey. And
hmm,
ironically, the part around my mother dying, leaving me, abandoning me,
abandoning.
my
Yeah.
father turned away from me. I was like I was the
Yeah.
youngest. So I was daddy's
Right.
girl. I'm no longer daddy's girl.
Right.
He just focused on my
Mm.
mother. And then when she died, he checked out. And that was the exact experience that I was feeling
Wow.
when John turned away from me to take
Mm-hmm.
care of Joey. And like John would come to town and get some stuff. And then
Mm-hmm.
we talked, but we didn't really talk because he was just
Just
super.
focus. Yeah.
And Blair goes, we could have written this
True.
script.
That's true. Yeah.
This right here is like a script of
Exactly.
like you just now am re-experiencing what you did as a child, but this time you get to be the adult.
Exactly. Exactly.
And
Lauren,
I
do you
got
think
to,
that you manifest that? Do you think that if we have unresolved patterns, let's say, do we manifest that later in life or many times maybe?
from my personal experience, it certainly looks like it.
Right.
I'm like, and I mean, I know that there's beliefs about that.
Right.
So many people, especially in the line of work that we do and helping people. Yeah, I do feel like we want to go back and mend or heal that
Mm-hmm.
part of our heart and
Right.
that inner child. And I do think on some level, I did create that, or at least I'm certainly grateful it happened because I got to do it differently.
Yes,
I got to
exactly.
do it with support. I got to talk about it.
Right.
The loss of my dad and my mother, there wasn't a whole lot of conversation about that. But with this, I got to talk about it. I got support and I was an adult. I made money. I could drive.
Exactly.
I had my own
Exactly.
place, my own sanctuary home. And it was
Right.
so different in that experience.
Right.
So I do think that there is possibility that is true. I'm not a scientist, so I don't have any
Right. No,
proof,
no,
but
exactly. Exactly. I mean, there's so many different beliefs around it. And I think that they're studying a lot about that because there's so much part of the brain that we don't even know what the power of the brain can do. I mean, we know we're getting more and more information, thank goodness, in this last, 10, 15 years. It's amazing, all the studies that they're doing. But there are some thoughts about that when we repeatedly think about certain things, whether it's conscious or subconscious, that we are creating our experience. And I do believe that. I've seen that for myself personally, but I've also seen it with a lot of my clients and patients as well, that the more that they will, repeatedly, feed, I guess you could say, certain kind of thought patterns, whatever, they manifest exactly that experience. Yeah.
And now that you're saying this,
Uh-huh.
I am now moving into, yes, because if we are looking through the lens of these beliefs and these experiences, then even if it's not exactly the same, we're going to see it as the same because that's the lens that we're looking through,
Exactly.
and projecting onto that. And, and when you mentioned, we just even haven't scratched the surface of what the capacity of the brain. And one of my favorite speakers, Arthur, is Ellen Langley. She's a 10-year professor at Harvard. She was first female tenure at Harvard, which impresses. And I think she's like 79. She's amazing. And she's done all these studies. She's I think a psychiatrist. No, psychologist. Sorry. And she has done a lot of this stuff. And one of the things that she says that I love so much is like, because when you talk to scientists and back in the the 20th century, that was all what the science and medical things were saying is that this is a fact. We as scientific proof that this is solid. This is what's going on. Do not eat eggs because it has cholesterol.
Exactly.
And now they're like, eat all the eggs you want to,
I know.
Her thing is everything is probable.
I love that.
It's not factual.
Exactly.
It's not factual. It's probable. And I love that. And so that's the thing that for me, I mean, I literally the other night, I had a lot of pain And I was laying in bed going, I'm so weirdly grateful that this is going on, because it gives me the opportunity to learn how to retrain my brain
Right.
into, all right. And that, like I said, one of the things that I learned through, I don't know if it was a podcast or something I read, because I am just like a little sponge going, oh, I want that too. And then I'll get halfway through something and I'll go over here. But that was where I learned that, like, use different words for describing how you're feeling, unless
Right.
you're softer. So, like, one of the things I talked about was, if you say my pain is burning, then you would say, my pain is not as cooling as I would like it
Right.
to be.
Exactly.
And so again, like, this is really, I consider this such a master's program that I'm moving into, in the
It
sense
definitely is.
where and I, from here on out, will always be open to new possibilities
I
and
think that's awesome.
curiosity.
That's
How can
great.
it get better than this?
Exactly. And you know what, Lauren, what you're saying right here is that, when you reframe the way that you think about and you relate to yourself, because this is about the relationship with ourselves. Okay.
Yeah.
This is the
Yep.
relationship with our physical body, with our soul, with every part of ourselves. And
Part of
sometimes
ourselves.
we forget about that. That is the most important relationship, because that's the relationship that you have forever, like in your entire lifespan. So it's like, okay, when we don't work on that, our body speaks to us, our physical self, our emotional self, whatever. And when we start reframing and talking to ourselves, just like we would to a loved one, it changes the game so much. And it
Yeah.
does, and all the symptoms that you have and all the signals, it's like being grateful for it, talking to it. I always, I always tell, I do this myself too, but I always tell my patients, I'm like, talk to your body, ask it. What's up? What are you doing? What are we doing here? What's on the schedule today? Just because we want to be able to allow it, because the more that we resist it, the more it will just persist and get louder and
Absolutely.
louder and louder.
Yeah.
So it's, and I know it's not always easy. It's not always a fun, joyful.
No, it is not.
Right.
And I heard this the other day too, a meditation about, look at your, what you're going through, whether, and this is also emotional pain too. It's like, because I know, like, one of my best friends lost her husband 3 years ago, who he was my other best friend. They were my two best friends. They married.
Right.
And watching her go through that process, I got to say that I'll probably get real choked up when I talk about it. It's hard for me to see her and the daughter go through all that grief and losing Scott, but at the same time, I also know that it's important, to feel it and to listen to it. Just like it's important, it matters to listen to the pain in the body. The pain of grief and the pain in the physical body is, to me, very, in together, like intertwined, I guess.
Right.
And when she said, you really want to, like, especially when you get a flare up, whether it's like, I'm going to go into this crying spell because I lost somebody, or I'm going to go into this, like, oh my God, flare up. They call it flare ups, in the pain body. And you're like, oh, my flare up. And it's like, look at it like, they said something like, look at it like it's a cartoon character having a tantrum. And that you want to kind of like soothe the cartoon character. And immediately, like, I got this visual of, and I don't know, Asha, if you were coming to me or we were working together when I had Zoe, the little Yorkie.
Yes. I remember Zoe. Yes.
Talk about a little healer. I'm telling you, I think she checked out early, because I think she took on a lot of my clients and my stuff, to be honest with you. And I'm so grateful for that. But Zoe, if anybody that listens to this has a Yorkie, they're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. But Yorkies tend to, I don't know if they just get stimulated very easily and their little amygdala gets triggered, but they get into these fits where they're, and like, if you're trying to take something away from them, they're like, and they're just like just freaking out. And I would have to take her
Hmm.
and gently roll her over
Right.
and keep her on her back, but gently, and just talk to her. Zoe, it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay, girl. It's all right. And breathe and stuff. And it took time, sometimes 10, 15 minutes. And she would finally drop whatever was in her mouth, like
Right.
a chicken bone, which you don't want her to eat. But she
Right.
would finally just like spit it out. And then I just let her go and she was fine. And that's
How
how now
interesting.
I'm seeing a, a flare up. It's like, uh,
Exactly. Exactly.
to
What a great
soothe.
teacher she was,
Oh,
Lauren. What a great teacher she was, you know?
she was amazing.
Yeah.
And she really did, because back, a lot of the process that I do in my work is I have people laying now, because I do remote, I have them
Right.
laying on their bed,
Right.
but on a massage table. And Zoe always wanted to be on top of the table with the
Right.
client. And so
Right.
I would say, "Are you okay with that?" And they're like, "Yeah, yeah." And she would lay between their legs.
Right.
And then, because she was so tiny, and then the moment that they shifted, a lot of the reasons why she would feel the shift before me and the client would,
Right.
because she would get up and crawl up right here and look at
Like
them
on the really? Oh,
on
wow.
their belly and
Right.
just look at them, and she could feel it. And I know that animals do that,
Yes.
because when I worked with a woman that had two cats,
Hmm.
and when she would start shifting, the cats would come up to the screen and look at me.
And oh,
And
wow.
so one
Okay.
day I videotaped it, because I said, "You're not going to believe this. Every single time you're integrating, your cats get in
Right.
the camera."
Exactly. Exactly.
So I do think she took on a lot of my clients' stuff. And I guarantee she took on any of my emotional stuff.
Right.
And she did pass too early. She was 12, and I fully
Mhm.
expected a Yorkie to live, 15, 18, like mine.
Exactly. Exactly. You know what, Lauren, you're bringing up a really good point, though, about taking on the energy of other people or whatever. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because how do you like deal with that? But also, how do you advise the people that you work with, your clients, how to to manage that?
So that's a really good question, and that may be another podcast at some point,
Sure.
because
Yeah.
one of the things that I know for me, like, I'm still practicing. I'll be honest with you. The one part that's hard for me is to contain the grief, the sadness. I tend to go
Mhm.
right into it with them. I just
Okay.
am. And
Right.
I think that's my empath stuff. We're all
Right.
empathic, but it's just like, so like that part is hard for me. Now, when they're dealing with like a divorce, or they're dealing with the loss of a job, or they're dealing with the
Right.
bankruptcy, or they're dealing with, even, miscarriages,
Right.
that kind of stuff, I can hold the energy with them and not take it on and
Right.
not feel it. But I wonder, now that we're having this conversation, I'm like, okay, well, this is kind of interesting. I'd not put this together. But maybe part of the beautiful thing about the grief of the loss of someone through death
Mhm.
is that it allows you to also do another layer of your own grieving.
Yes, it does. That's true. That's very true.
I didn't even think
Yeah.
about that till right this moment. I just had that aha. And it was like, because I remember having moments
Mhm.
where I just could not stop crying with my friend
Right.
and her daughter. Oh, when I think about her daughter was 18, it was like,
Ooh.
brings me to my knees. But I
Right.
do think it has something to do with my own. And I think it's a beautiful thing. And that's what connects us. Grief connects people. If you've, and
Right.
everybody's had to experience at least, they will experience the loss of somebody through death at some point.
Exactly. Exactly. But Lauren, let me ask you something about that because, like, okay, with grief, everybody deals with it differently, right?
Mhm.
I mean, what do you do when people in your life, whether it's family or friends, don't want to deal with it? And won't deal with it for years. You know what I mean? Like, how do you manage that? Because I know, like, I've had, clients and even patients that have had family members or friends that they thought that they were really close and everything. All of a sudden, you know, they're out of there. They're like, they don't even want to
Can't
deal
deal
with
with it.
They don't even want to
Can't
deal
deal
with it.
with it.
And some of them get stuck in anger. Sometimes they get stuck in just being angry all the time. But I've seen it shift relationships in such a way. So then you've got another layer of grief happening,
Loss. Yeah.
right? It's another loss.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think, from my personal experience too, is that I'm able to look at that person as they're just not ready.
Right.
They're just not ready. And it's kind of like what you were saying earlier about pain in the body. Sometimes the pain has to get so bad before somebody will wake up.
Exactly.
And I think it's the same thing. It's like if somebody moves away from a relationship because they can't handle your grief, and first off, that's not the right person for you to go to and have witness your grief, because grief is not to be fixed. We know that. Everybody knows. I mean, I hope most people know that.
Right.
It's just there to be witnessed, or there to be, to say,
right,
this matters. This matters.
Exactly. You know what,
And
Lauren,
that's it.
that's true. That's a very good point. You know what, someone being there for you, it's not about them fixing anything. It's not about them making you feel, but it's just allowing it to be.
Yep.
Do you think that there's a certain time frame that people, you know what I mean? Because the reason why I'm bringing this up, I live in a culture here in the Netherlands where they are very quick to say, did you put it in its place? Basically, I'm just doing a loose translation of the language, but like, did you find a place for it? Meaning, park it somewhere and that's it. We just move
on with your life.
Get on with it. And I see people a lot of times that have such physical pain because guess what? They have been suppressing and
and that's what causes
suppressing.
pain.
And the body's just like, I can't take it anymore. As this starts screaming, So is there a certain time frame? Or is this something that you just always deal with?
I honestly, that is something I don't know. And if I had to speculate at all, I would say they're not ready. They can't handle it. I think I watched my father do that.
Right.
And I watched my brother do it. My brother passed away 2 years ago, actually yesterday. And I watched him go through it. He's 14 years older, where they never dealt with their pain, never dealt with the grief. They felt it, but then they put it back in a box. And both my dad and my brother had chronic back pain. My brother had a TENS machine constantly.
Wow.
Constantly. Yeah. And, he was just, and I tried to talk to my brother about it, because he, about 5-6 years ago, he moved to Austin. It was really, we had a great time. And then it got really hard after that. He had a drinking issue. And then he also had the early set of dementia. And so I kind of lost him before I lost him. You know how that goes. But bottom line, I did try to talk to him about the pain of his divorce, or like the loss of our mother. We had one really good conversation about when mother died, and how, I did not know this, but he rode on the airplane with her body to Uvalde, where we were going to bury her.
Oh, wow.
And I was supposed to ride with him, and he was more upset that I didn't get to go with him. Because I think he always protected me.
Right.
He stepped into the role of my father after that. But it's towards the end, and he went through a pretty tough divorce, like probably 10, 15 years before he passed. And he just would not talk about it. Just compartment. And the way I saw it was, this is the only way he can deal with it. He has to compartmentalize it, and he's willing to sacrifice his physical body for it.
Right.
He's willing to feel pain physically than to do the emotional pain.
Exactly.
I've been the opposite.
You're
I
like,
have
bring
been
it on.
so good with emotional pain. I can't even tell you. Matter of fact,
Right.
funny story. Do we have time? Do we have, I don't
Absolutely.
need, okay.
Absolutely.
Funny story was when I was probably 33, 34, something like
Mhm.
that. My wisdom teeth came in late.
Okay.
And my older sister's husband's dad was our dentist.
Okay.
And when I had to get my wisdom, I know I was such a baby with the dentist. We had
I
terrible
still
dentistry.
am. Okay. I still am.
That's a whole other story. I finally found a dentist on the island I love. Not to mention that if I was about 30 years younger, I'd be like, he's so cute. But I was so frightened, and Allison went with me, and because her father-in-law Ducky's like, yeah, come on in with her and stuff. So of
Right.
course he on gas, and of course he shot me up, and there's no way I could feel physical pain.
Right.
There's no way. But I started imagining what it would feel like
Oh, no.
if, and I'm on gas, and I'm like, Lord, just calm down. I'm
Right.
trying to encourage myself. And my sister, tears are coming out of my eyes, and my sister's holding my hand, and she goes, oh, Lauren, I'm so glad you decided not to have children, because I don't think you could ever get through childbirthing.
Oh my gosh.
So that again is another opportunity for me to be experiencing this pain in my body,
Exactly.
because it's like, wow, I
Yeah.
really am getting tough.
Right. Exactly.
It also, I know it's building neuroplasticity in my brain,
It
and
is
that really gives
definitely.
you that resiliency,
Yeah.
and thriving around it. But yeah, my brother was willing to deal with the physical
Mhm.
pain, just like I think a lot of your patients, they'd
Yeah.
rather, and maybe just, I feel like knowing you plant seeds,
I do.
and eventually
Definitely.
when time is ready,
Yeah.
they're going to come in, they're going to go, okay, yeah.
I definitely do. You know what, Lauren? I think that that's important that we plant seeds because not everybody is at the same place. They're not ready. They're partially ready. Some are just ready up to a certain point. Some of them don't have awareness of what it is that they know that something needs a change, but they have no idea what. And I do believe that whenever we plant seeds, with our own experiences, our own knowledge and everything, we give an opportunity for people, because I do believe that everybody, each and every one of us, can transform and change and really change the
Choice.
experience. It's a choice, right? Whether we take it or not, it's up to us, and there's no judgment about it. Whether you do or you don't, it's okay. But knowing that the choice is there, sometimes I think that is just huge.
Oh,
That's
I do
huge for a lot
too.
of people.
Well, choice gives us power.
Exactly.
If we know that we
Yeah,
have a
that's right.
choice, that gives us power. That's what it feels like. We have power. And,
Right.
I often, this is another kind of visual that I have about
Right.
people. And, I'm not here to save anybody. I'm here to hold the space and, just be supportive. But I see some people where like the universe has to tap them on the shoulder. And it's like, if they don't wake up, then the universe kind of gives them a shove. And if they don't wake up,
Exactly.
then they get shoved off a building. And if they don't
Yep.
wake up, then they get run over by a Mack truck.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
so it's like,
Yeah.
your ability to be aware comes from your level of pain and grief. I mean,
Yeah.
how many times have you heard stories about, and they're beautiful and they're hard and they're beautiful and they're sad,
Right.
and just again, that level of pain and grief that we can lean into is the level of love and joy that we can experience. You know what I'm saying? But
It
have
is.
you ever heard of anybody who's, really lost somebody and feeling the grief so fully that they feel like they're never going to stop? They're
Yeah.
afraid. And I do think that's a
Yeah.
lot of the reasons why people fear starting.
Exactly. And I think that that's one of the reasons why they suppress it. They numb it. They, push it aside. That's it. I'm not dealing with it because it does matter. It makes them feel like something mattered. And because it's no longer physically there in whatever form, whether somebody's passed away or a relationship's not there, I think people are afraid to give in to that because it can be, it's a beautiful journey, but it can be a very painful journey at times. And I don't know if we're necessarily taught in our society how to deal with it. I don't think that we talk about it enough, to be honest
It's
with you. That's why I
true.
was so excited about having this conversation with you today, because this is something that I think a lot of people are afraid to start the conversation about because of the pain that might come up, because of the emotions,
Yeah.
because we don't have the tools for it necessarily.
And it's like what you said earlier about when a relationship ends because one person can't handle the grief.
Right.
And it is just one of those things that I firmly believe that we got to lean into it. We
Yes.
can't, if we resist it, like you said, it persists, but if you resist, it's more painful, it's harder.
It is. It is definitely harder. I mean, that's something with physical pain too that happens. It becomes harder. If you don't listen to that tightness, in the foot, for example, I'll just give an example. If you don't
Yeah.
listen to that, it's going to get worse. You're not going to be able to walk on the foot. You're not going to be able to stand up on the foot. And then eventually the pain is so, it just is coming up to your hip and to your back. And when we learn about like, okay, my body is working for me, not against me,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
so changes things because our body is, I
Yeah.
hear a lot of people talking about how, oh, my body's failing me. Oh, my body's doing this. And they get angry at their body. And I'm like, this is
Oh,
your vehicle. It's there
yeah.
for you.
Yeah.
How are you going to embrace it and work with it? That's why I think it's so important. How we take care of ourselves is very important. And, you always hear people saying, oh, I don't have time. I just don't have time. And I'm like, you either make time for it now,
Yeah.
or you're going to be forced to make time for it in a different way.
Oh, yeah. It's
I
going to be
mean,
a lot harder if you're forced to make time
it's
for
like,
it.
and it's your choice. And there again, they're at choice. They can choose. And, I think that's why it's important whenever we have conversations like this, it helps open up people's minds a little bit to inspire them to choose differently.
Plant that seed.
Exactly. Exactly. So, Lauren, tell me, how can people reach you if they would like to work with you? Because I know you work with clients all over the world. And can you talk a little bit about the work that you do and how people can reach you, where they can find you?
Yeah. So, after being the hairdresser, I was like, okay, actually got into energy work. I didn't get my coaching certification till much later.
Right.
And I think I just kind of really started tapping into my intuition about the time that I was leaving hair. And I started studying a process called, back then it was holographic repatterning. And so it has had many different integrations. But for me, I ended up taking what I learned through hypnotherapy and
Hmm.
neurolinguistics programming, which that's why I love words, I'm like
Right.
a wordsmith, and like timeline therapy and all these different things. And I put them together and I decided to call this resonance realignment. So
Mhm.
instead of repatterning, it's realignment. Because I
Right.
don't really feel like, I think we just get out of alignment and we need to get back in. But the process that I do is called resonance realignment. So I do coach people. I help them figure out strategies. I help them, look at the options that they have. Because
Hmm.
we all tend to see one option, and that doesn't give us choice, which doesn't give
Right.
us power. So I help them at least come up with 1 to 2 more choices.
Hmm.
And 3 options is ideal. And then, what I do with the work is that, again, person has an experience, they have a thought about it, they have a feeling, emotion about it, and then they have a belief. So in resonance realignment, we get to the core of that limiting belief. Okay.
Hmm.
And then that limiting belief has a narrow pathway, and it's
Right.
just riding that narrow pathway. And so we can't undo that narrow pathway.
Hmm.
Dr. Tara Schwartz talks a lot about this. I really like her work too,
Right.
where you can't undo it, but you can overwrite it.
Exactly.
And the way we do that is we come up with special upgraded statements or beliefs that we can infuse into the system. And I use modalities like sound therapy, acupuncture points. I don't do it on the body. I do it proxy, a diagram. We use color therapy. We use, there's so many different ones. And basically what that does is it activates the new positive statements, creating that new neural pathway, which then you want to practice that. So I also send the clients positive statements to re-listen, because you're retraining your brain, you know?
Exactly.
And, but anyway, that's the process that I do with that. And it's funny because I'm really been more into the writing right now. I'm very focused on that. And I just kind of quit really putting myself out there because I think I do better with referrals versus cold call people on social media. And I really connect with it, you know, with referrals. And so, but that you can go to my website, laurenjohnston.me. It's pretty easy. But what I really love right now, I feel like I'm going into my third career really as a writer and loving every minute of it. I took writing classes in college, but I didn't do that much with it.
Right.
But my Substack is my new place, my new avenue. I'd love for people to just read and, you know, I'd love their input. If not, you know, that's great too. But it's fun. It's fun to share. And it's like, I'm excited when we get off this call because I'm get to go write about, one of my dearest people in my life. She was somewhat of another mother to me. She came into my beauty school the week before I graduated and demanded to have me cut her hair. Oh, I don't know why. And she was the only one who did not do a shampoo set. She was probably in her 60s. I was 25. And I just cut her hair dry. She had this cute little bob with a little flip. It was white as snow. And she went back into the school 6 weeks later and paid somebody money to get my phone number. And I cut that woman's hair till she was 96 years old.
Oh my God.
Even when I quit doing hair, I would still go to her retirement home every 6 weeks and cut Margaret's hair. And she was a good friend. We went to movies together. We had dinner together. You know, she became she was such a powerhouse. She just, her story is so beautiful. So anyway, that's what I'm going to be writing about today.
Yeah.
And also the loss of her, like losing her the way I found out. And it was beautiful. She had she died basically in her sleep.
Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing.
And she really, honestly, she was my role model. And I've always said, I'm going to be just like Margaret. And I have been.
And
remember, Margaret was 64, turning 65. And she was still gardening and walking 5 miles a day and just, you know, going to live music because her son was a musician.
But she was loving life. She was living and loving life. And I'm sure
she had lost
a lot of things in her time too.
And she lost her husband probably 10 years before I met her. And I did not learn until much later, later that she was like, well, he was kind of a person. Because I probably would have still been married to him. Because I had never broached the subject with her. And finally, now her son died, and that'll be in the story too. But basically, that was hard for her. But when I was like, well, so I know it's been hard losing Keith and, you know, your mother, because she took care of her mother towards the end. Because what about, you know, never talked about your husband? And she's like, because he was.
So it's like the truth comes.
I love that.
Yeah.
I just thought that was just so real and so raw. And, you know, and talk about somebody who had a lot of loss, you know, the loss of a child. I got to say, I haven't had.
That's huge.
I don't have children, but I can tell you, I think that would take me to a whole other level.
That is a very, very difficult thing. We have, unfortunately, in our family, quite a few losses recently, and of the children. And it's
So
It is.
hard.
It's a very, that's a whole other journey. That's a whole other journey. But yeah, but like you said, that pain means that it mattered.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how do that's another way to unpack it for sure. But yeah, that's
And how do you live with, how do you learn
exactly.
to live differently is really what the gist of it. But yeah, those are the two places.
So,
Well,
Lauren, I have one question for you before we end today. First of all, thank you so much for joining me today. I really enjoyed having you, and I hope that you'll come back again. I would love to have another conversation with you. But one question for you. What is one piece of advice that you have received in your life that you would like to share with the listeners today? Something that you feel has really made a difference for yourself, like a piece of advice.
I mean, it's just to sum it all up, it's like lean into the grief. Don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid of grief because it sits right next to love.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I heard that from a writer's grandmother had mentioned it. I can't think of
Mhm.
his name right now, otherwise I'd give him credit. But it really touched me so much because I
Mhm.
think that's what my whole book is about. It's just lean into it. Don't be
Mhm.
afraid of it because it's love and grief go together.
Exactly. Oh, it's so beautiful. So beautiful. Thank you so much, Lauren.
Thank you, Asha. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well,